Unmute yourself and read the English Bible.
Again, read.
1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 1.
Chapter 7.
Chapter 7, verse 1.
Now I have Urdu Bible. Do you want me to read in Urdu or English?
Urdu would be wonderful. Read in Urdu.
Chapter 7, verse
1.
1. जो बातें तुमने लिखी थी उनकी बाबत ये है, मर्द के लिए अच्छा है कि औरत को ना छुए.
Okay, now, the way I've always understood this passage is that this passage was saying that Paul was saying it is good for a man not to have relations with a woman. And literally in the Greek, it doesn't say relations, it says touch. But if you look at Greek writings of different Greek writers, when it says touch a woman, it means to have sex with a woman. That's actually what it means. And so it doesn't actually mean just touch a woman, it means have sex. So now, for all my life, I always thought it meant that it was better for men not to touch women. But then, okay, this thing is annoying. All right, so here, look at the way the Holman Christian Standard Bible interprets it. Now, in response to the matters you wrote about, that's what it says in the Greek. In response to the matters you wrote about, or concerning the matters you wrote about. It is good for a man not to have relations with a woman. You notice that it's in quotations. So the way that the people who wrote the Holman Christian Standard Bible are understanding it is, Paul is quoting the letter they wrote to him. Now, in response to the matters you wrote about, you wrote, it is good for a man not to have relations with a woman. That's what the Corinthians are asking Paul. It's not Paul making a statement. Because if Paul says it's good for a man not to have relations with a woman, Paul's contradicting Jesus, he's contradicting Genesis, he's contradicting the whole Old Testament, and he's contradicting himself in this chapter. This is not saying it's not good for a man to have relations with a woman. This is saying, you guys wrote this sentence, it is good for a man not to have relations with a woman. And now the rest of the chapter is going to be answering their statement. Now, for some of us, say it again.
Paul is answering that you wrote that you were saying that it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Not Paul is saying, but he's saying you.
Say that again. He's saying what?
Paul is saying you wrote this. It is good for a man not to touch a woman.
Exactly.
Not Paul. Okay.
And it's totally different, isn't it? But it really does fit it. And when you look at it in the Greek, totally, that's what it's doing in the Greek. And I have a super good commentary on this particular question. And this guy gives, I don't know, 2 or 3 pages of arguments why that is what it says. I'm totally convinced. I am so encouraged by this because the rest of the chapter makes it really clear that it is good. It's not bad at all. So, okay. So you guys got that?
And sir?
Yes.
And sir, he's talking about the people wrote letter to Paul or in other books.
No. The matters to which you wrote about. And that's what it says in the Greek. They wrote to him and they were asking this question.
Oh, okay.
It's a good question. It's a very good question. Let's look at it in the Greek for a second. I'm going to just make it disappear. Concerning what you wrote. See, it's really clear in Greek. There's no question about it in the Greek. So they had written, and he is answering their question. Masood, do you understand?
Yes, I understand.
Wow, what a difference this makes. All right, now, the rest of the chapter is really talking about this. Now, why on earth would they say that it's not good for a man to touch a woman? Because that's what religion does. Lots and lots of religions, not just Hinduism does that. Hinduism has these gurus who never touch a woman, never have anything to do with women because they think somehow that's holy, that makes them pure or something, or that really honestly, when they mean holy, they mean is that they're not influenced by bad karma and stuff like that. Passion is bad. Buddhists, the same kind of a thing with Buddhists where they avoid that kind of a thing because passion is a bad thing for them. So here, it's not surprising at all that the Corinthians would say this. The danger is in believing this. Hello, Majid. The danger in people believing this is it's directly against the New Testament and the Old Testament. All right? So now, what he's going to do is he's going to start talking about sexual morality. All right, so verse 2. But because sexual immorality is so common, each man should have his own wife, and each woman should have her own husband. That's a little bit of a strange phrase. It's a little bit odd in the Greek, not terribly odd, but it's a little odd in the Greek. Because of sexual immorality is so common, that's pretty good. Literally, it says because of the immoralities. And the word for immorality is porneia. We get our word pornography from there. And the porneia can mean any kind of sexual immorality, any kind, and especially adultery, but it can mean any kind. So now, he doesn't say because of porneia singular, he says porneia plural. And so it could mean, if it was singular, it would be just in general. But because he uses the plural, I think what's going on is that there's a lot of sexual immorality going on in Corinth. The city of Corinth, and I think in the church of Corinth. We already know of one. There's a man living with his mother, his stepmother. And so that's one. But then I think we can pretty easily demonstrate that there's a lot more sexual immorality that's going on in Corinth, which some of that we're going to look at later on. It's pretty shocking. It's pretty powerful when we look at that. But then his set statement, each man should have his own wife as opposed to having somebody else's wife. That's a strange statement, isn't it? Each woman should have her own husband as opposed to having someone else's husband. But he's making a statement that is very important. It's one husband, one wife. Bus. See the statement he's making? One husband, one wife. This isn't just like what we have happen here, but it's also because in Corinth, and really honestly over most of that world, it was extremely common for men to go to the temple to have sex with prostitutes. It was very, very, very common for a man to be married and treat his wife like dirt, and then just to go out and go to prostitutes on a regular basis. This was just a very common part of life. So what Paul is doing is not just saying no such thing as double marriage or three wives, not that. He's not just saying that. He is saying that. But he's saying you have one wife, bus. Nowhere else, just one wife, bus. And woman has one husband, bus. That's it. It's a very, very clear way, and the Corinthians would understand exactly what he's doing there. So we understand this. We, as Christians, we believe this pretty strongly. And sexual immorality is the great path of destruction. I could just say, if you want to destroy your life, if you want to destroy everything, fall into sexual immorality, because it's a trap that never ends bringing destruction. In the Old Testament is filled with destruction. And a lot of it comes from sexual immorality. Not all of it, but a lot. All right, so now, a husband should fulfill his marital responsibility to his wife, and likewise, a wife to her husband. A wife does not have the right over her own body, but her husband does. In the same way, a husband does not have the right over his own body, but the wife does. Now, this is absolutely world-changing. This is world-changing. To actually say that the husband and the wife have the same rights, that the husband has a responsibility, first of all, and the wife has a responsibility, but that the wife doesn't have the right over her own body, the husband does. Everyone in the ancient world would accept that. But they wouldn't accept that in the same way a husband does not have right over his own body, but the wife does. This is a really monumental thing, because now Paul is elevating women to be at the same level as the husband. And that's completely contrary to first century culture. And in a lot of ways, it's contrary to culture in a lot of places. I'm going to open this up for questions in a few minutes, but this is rather, shall we say, it's rather awkward to discuss, so you may not want to talk about it. Do not deprive one another sexually, except when you agree for a time to devote yourself in prayer, then come together. Otherwise, Satan may tempt you because of your lack of self-control. I say the following as a concession, not a command. I think that's pretty obvious. I don't need to say anything about that. I bet you didn't know that was in the Bible. And then 7, I wish that all people were just like me, but each has his own gift from God, one person in this way and another in that way. So, let's see. There we go. So here, Paul's saying something pretty remarkable. Masood?
Yes.
Would you be so kind as to read verse 7 in the Urdu?
Yes. और मैं तो ये चाहता हूँ कि जैसा मैं हूँ वैसे ही सब आदमी हों, लेकिन हर एक को खुदा की तरफ से खास खास तौफीक मिली है, किसी को किसी तरह की, किसी को किसी तरह की.
That's interesting. Anybody have any questions about this before we talk about it? Any questions about this verse? Yes, Musa. You can unmute yourself, Musa. Okay.
Yes, sir.
There you go.
So I just wanted to clear myself that there's written a husband should no, a wife does not have right over her body, but the husband does. So is this from Genesis that God have given them the right, like they are one body, one flesh, like is it from there, relating there something?
Yes.
And
talk.
and other thing that it is good for man to have it is not good it is good for man not to have relation but sexually each man should have his own wife. This is from Matthew, where Jesus says that if we are having another wife, we are having like we are having adultery with her, something like this.
Yes, and I'm positive that this would be based upon Jesus's teaching.
This is okay.
I'm sure that Paul is basing this on Jesus's teaching. We're going to see in a few minutes, he actually quotes from Jesus, but here I would say that he is basing this on Jesus. Yeah, that's a good question.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Sir, I did not understand verse 5.
Verse 5.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
What that means is, say for example that a couple wants to spend an extended time in prayer. maybe they're going to set aside a whole day for prayer. Then they could say, well, we're going to, I mean, I'm sorry to be so rude, but we're not going to have sex together. For this day, we're going to devote ourselves to prayer. But Paul says, this is so important. Do not separate yourselves from each other sexually for a long period of time, even for religious reasons, if that can put the husband in a position where he is going to be tempted. It's just a male thing with the male cycle that after a certain number of days, the male has a very strong desire to have sex. I'm sorry, I hate talking about this, but anyway, but what he's saying is don't, even for religious reasons, you should not keep apart from each other. Does that make sense, Ishan?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I know it's kind of, this is really awkward
Sir,
to discuss this, but there you go. Yes.
in verse 7, Paul is saying, I wish that people could be like me, and like me. So he's saying, by this we know he didn't marry, and he was saying, and he was wishing like no one to marry. It is good, but not have same kind of gifts of everyone. So they should, if they, like in other verses they say, if they are thinking, if they couldn't control over their desire, they should marry. So by this we say Paul is saying, if God wants, and if you can, don't marry, you can say.
Yeah, that's a really good question. This is a really interesting discussion because Paul is.
Sir, can you repeat the question?
So the question is Paul saying here that he would prefer that people not get married, but that God has a specific gift for some people to get married, and he has a specific gift for other people not to get married? Apparently, yes.
Okay, sir.
Not
Okay.
everybody should get married. I mean, we're going to see why in a few lines down. He's going to explain why.
Okay.
And it's pretty powerful. All right. So I commit. Wait a minute. Verse 8. I say to the unmarried and to widows, it is good for them if they remain as I am. But if they do not have self-control, they should marry. For it is better to marry than to burn with desire. The word desire is not there in the Greek. It's not there. That is this interpretation. It actually just says burn. And some commentators say it means to like burn in hell, but probably not. Probably it's not even talking about desire. It's probably talking about the need to be in a relationship, the need to be loved, the need to, might even be talking about someone who is in love. But it could mean sexual temptation, but probably not. It's probably just talking about, because the words with desire are not there in the Greek. It just says to burn. I'm not going to say anything more about that. I'm going to move on to the next one. I command the married, not I, but the Lord. A wife. Okay. Here you go. When he says, but the Lord. Everybody see that? But the Lord. All right. That's a surprising statement. And he goes, not I, but the Lord. Okay. Anita, in the New Testament, when you see the words, the Lord, who is it talking about? Anita, who is it talking about usually?
Sir, I can't understand what are you saying.
Okay, when you see this, it says, not I, but the Lord. When it says the Lord in the New Testament, who is it usually talking about?
Mm. Sir, I have no idea.
That's fine. Who's it usually talking about when it says the Lord?
Jesus.
Yeah, I don't think that was Musa, but yes, it is Jesus. When you see
Yeah.
the word the Lord there, it's almost always talking about Jesus Christ. I have never done a study, but my sense it's
Okay, but the Lord
yeah. So here he says, "I command the marriage."
in the verse 10
Yeah, in verse 10, it says, "But the Lord." He's
and then to
talking about
Lord
yes.
and unto the man.
Yeah, so oh okay, this is gonna die in 10 minutes and then come right back, okay? Because I will just reopen it right away. All right, so when it says in the Lord there, I mean but the Lord, he's saying I command the married, not I, but the Lord, he means the Lord Jesus. So when he says but the Lord, he means the Lord Jesus is the one who's actually made this commandment. So he is quoting, or more than alluding, he's paraphrasing what Jesus said when Jesus taught. So that's interesting, either from Mark or Matthew. So there's no question about it.
Sir, according to this verse,
Yes,
sir, can I add something?
please.
Okay, sir. According to this verse, Paul is saying this commandment is not from mine and from the God. Am I right?
No, from Jesus.
Jesus.
From Jesus?
It's from what Jesus taught.
Okay, okay.
Excellent, excellent question. Lots of people, scholars, are asking that question, but I would say everybody agrees that when he says, but the Lord here, he means Lord Jesus commanded this when Jesus taught when he was on earth.
Okay, sir.
Excellent, excellent question.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah, a wife is not to leave her husband. The word leave there means to separate yourself. So a wife is not to separate herself from her husband. Could mean divorce? Not necessarily. But
No,
note
sir.
11. Yes. Somebody said something.
Sir, I was saying, sir, there is no concept of divorce in Christianity. So this must be not there must be not divorce. Talking about
No, there is a concept of divorce in Christianity.
Yeah. Only one.
And if there's sexual immorality, that someone can divorce the person.
sir, but sir, you cannot marry then. Like we can separate. There is a concept. Okay, I've studied that we can only separate
Hmm.
each other.
Yeah, but Jesus says that you can't separate except in the case of adultery.
Yes.
If a husband commits adultery, the wife can separate from her husband. She can divorce her husband. She can remarry.
And she can marry.
Yes, Jesus
Yes, sir.
says, yes, you're right. Jesus actually says that she can remarry. He says if someone divorces and marries somebody else, except in the case of adultery. So that does mean that divorce is possible in remarriage.
Okay.
It's good. It's a very good question.
Thank you.
Look at this crazy verse 11. You've already heard this in Christian ethics probably, but if she does leave, and that's the only, I don't know of any other command in the Old Testament or the New Testament that actually says, but if every other place where there's a command, there's no but if. So the command, do not lie, but if you do lie, only tell things that don't hurt people. There's no such thing. Or do not commit murder, but if you do commit murder, make sure you use a knife. There's no such thing. So consistently, when there's a command, there is never a but, except here. We have 5 minutes and 51 seconds before the meeting is going to shut off, okay, just so you know. See, they're trying to make me spend $149 to upgrade, but We're in the middle of an economic downturn of cosmic proportions. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so here he actually gives the woman an indirect permission to leave her husband. Because he says, but if she does leave. The word that he uses there for leave is a different word. It means to separate yourself. It doesn't actually mean divorce. And he only gives her two options in verse 11. But if she does leave, she must remain unmarried or be reconciled to her husband. Bus. Those are the only two options. Unless her husband commits adultery. If her husband commits adultery, then she's free to remarry. Remember, Paul is reminding us, he's giving us what Jesus taught. So we go back to what Jesus said, except in the case of adultery. Any questions about this? Super, super powerful. Questions? If a guy's beating a woman, she can leave her husband. She's not supposed to leave, but if she does leave, but she only has two options. Either she doesn't get married, or else she's reconciled. Those are her two options, unless he commits adultery. Masood, did you say something?
No.
Okay. Any questions? So if you guys are saying, if somebody comes to you and says, I don't know what to do about, I want to divorce this person or whatever, all you need to do is come here and come to what Jesus taught. If you come here, then you need to find what Jesus taught in Matthew 5 and Matthew 18. And I think you're pretty covered. Notice, though, that Paul does not give the husband the same right. Look at this crazy thing. Look at this. And a husband is not to leave his wife. Bus. Do you see the difference? I command the married, not I but the Lord, a wife is not to leave her husband. But if she does leave, she must remain unmarried or be reconciled to her husband. And a husband is not to leave his wife. Do you notice that? Isn't that crazy? He doesn't give the husband the same option. Why is that? Please explain to me why. Why doesn't Paul give the husband the same right to leave his wife that he gives to the wife?
Because, sir, a husband's responsibility is to be with his wife, with her wife.
Is. That's true.
Am I right?
Yes, that's an excellent comment. And there's something else too. That's one part, and what's the other part? What happens to a woman when her husband leaves her? What happens to her?
She became widow. And
Keep going.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
According to this part, the only condition when the husband is need to leave his wife, the sexual immorality or adultery.
That's correct. That is an excellent statement. Yes. That's what Jesus. Do you have something to say?
so here he's saying only the wife can separate and for a time, and then she can reconcile to her husband. On that time, while she is living separate for a while, for some reason, so the husband cannot divorce his wife. But in other case, he's not saying like if a husband wants to live for a while to separate his wife. His 11 verse is only saying if she does separate, she must remain unmarried or be reconciled to her husband.
Yeah. But
Not,
keep talking.
but he is not saying the same thing to the husband. I think because husband is the one who just like in the while Jesus was on earth, and they come to this question, and they said what uh, what is the reason and how is the reason, and if a man give divorce to his wife, if because Moses said this to, if a man can divorce his wife. But here, over there in Matthew, Jesus totally said, Moses said because of your rudeness, and
Yeah.
and Jesus said only the husband can give the divorce if wife does adultery, and that's why I think Paul is not.
So, Masood, you were saying that the man does not have the same right to separate that the woman has. Is that what you were saying?
Yes, I'm asking because Paul doesn't say the same thing about the husband. He just say wife if she wants.
So, Martina, why would
So
he say that? Why would he give the woman the right, but the man no right?
I'm not sure about that, but maybe because the man has to leave his family and live with his wife, and he's the head of the family, because and he should be respected by the wife and something like that. I'm trying to connect all the scriptures that talks about a husband and a wife relation. So I'm actually not quite sure why he says that the husband should not leave. But
Go ahead.
maybe because it's his responsibility to take care of the wife.
And that's what Zishan said.
She's
Really
she's
good.
the body.
Ah,
She's the body and he's the head, and he needs to take care of the body.
yes.
and
Go ahead.
Um,
That's
I
good.
don't know.
That's good. Masood?
and and sir, can I add one thing? Because Apostle Peter says, Jesus said, Paul says, love your husband as Christ loves your wife as Christ loves the church. So it doesn't matter if his wife is living separate for a while because of some reason. So he should wait because Jesus loved the church unconditional. So that's why, because he's saying husband is the head, and he should wait and he shouldn't divorce her
Okay, I want to
while
clarify.
she's living.
Masood, it is not talking about, when it talks about the husband not leaving his wife, it's not connecting that to the husband whose wife has separated from him. It's a general rule to the wife that she should not leave her husband, but if she does, she must remain single or be reconciled. And it's a general rule to the husband that he must not leave his wife. Bus. Okay. So those are not, and the reason why Jesus says that if a man divorces his wife, he causes her to commit adultery. And the reason is because she has to remarry in order to survive. A man in the world whose wife leaves him, his life is easier. He doesn't have children to take care of. He doesn't have to worry about feeding his wife. His life is going to be easier. A woman who is divorced or left by her husband, what does she do? She's stuck. And so Jesus said that a man who divorces his wife causes her to commit adultery. And that's the same principle that Paul is basing on. Paul is not giving the husband the freedom to divorce his wife or to leave his wife. I mean, I suppose if she's demon possessed and she's always trying to stab him at night, yeah, I guess so. I know somebody that actually happened to. But generally, oh no, you don't want no, this is not what you're supposed to get. Let's change that one. I didn't want to share my email. I wanted to share the Bible. Yeah, that's better. Okay. All right. Okay, now the question about unbelieving. This is a normal kind of question. Verse 12. But I, not the Lord. In other words, Jesus didn't speak to this issue. He's not saying that Jesus doesn't ever speak to this. Is that coronavirus? Jesus didn't speak to this particular issue. That's not really funny. All right. Okay, let's look at this. There we go. I want to get all of you in there. All right. But I, not the Lord, because he didn't speak to this issue when he was on earth, say to the rest, if any brother has an unbelieving wife and she is willing to live with him, he must not leave her. Also, if any woman has an unbelieving husband and he is willing to live with her, she must not leave her husband. For the unbelieving husband is set apart for God by the wife. Doesn't mean he's saved. And the unbelieving wife is set apart for God by the husband. Otherwise, your children would be corrupt, but now they are set apart from God. Now, this is really confusing. I don't know what this means. But I'm thinking, my guess is that it means when he says set apart, it means that the wife, if she's the believer, she's going to love her husband, and she's going to share good with her husband, and she is going to pray for her husband, and by God's grace, lead him to faith. And the same thing with the children. I think that's what it's saying. Because then look what he says in verse 16. Verse 15. But if the unbeliever leaves, let him leave. A brother or sister is not bound in such a case. God has called you to live in peace. For you, wife, how do you know whether you will save your husband? Or you, husband, how do you know whether you will save your wife? Now, I just want to say something here. This is Christian ethics, as we always ask this question, Christian ethics. This is not giving a Christian permission to marry a Muslim. This is a person who converts to Christianity and her husband is a Muslim or her husband's a Hindu or whatever. This is not saying, I give you permission to marry an unbeliever. That's not what it's doing. It's if you are already married to an unbeliever and you become a believer, don't leave your husband or don't leave your wife. Jehovah's Witnesses, if a person becomes a Jehovah's Witness and that person's wife is not a Jehovah's Witness, Jehovah's Witnesses give you permission to divorce your wife, but not the Bible. If you're married to an unbeliever, you stay married to an unbeliever. If they leave you, you're free. So pretty obvious and straightforward, right? No questions there.
Yes.
Okay.
And sir, what does it mean in verse 14? Now your sons are holy.
Okay.
For the unbelieving husband
I don't know.
is sanctified by his wife, and
I don't
the
know.
unbelieving again.
I don't know. I don't know what it means. It could mean that your children are protected by the Holy Spirit in some special way. It could mean that it's not defiling to Jesus for a husband and wife to be one flesh. If the husband is an unbeliever, even if he worships demons, which is very possible for an unbeliever, even if an unbeliever worships demons, the wife could say, well, I can't have physical relations with my husband because he loves demons and he worships demons. And it could be that Paul is saying, no, that's not the case. The wife who's the believer means that you can have physical relation with your husband even though he worships demons, because you are the one who makes him holy. He doesn't make you unholy. That could be what it is. That maybe. I don't know.
And sir, it can be applied like on all the oral children who's they are newborn, they like new birth, they are holy
I don't know.
by birth,
I don't know.
because it is saying like in present tense they are holy now.
No, I don't know.
ST.
I don't know. When you figure it out, do your master's thesis on this, okay? And then call.
Okay.
We'll give you all of you guys, give Masood your phone numbers, okay? And
Okay.
when you do your master's thesis on, you let us know, because I think that is an incredibly difficult passage to understand. Not as difficult as tongues. All right. Now, the way we're doing this course, because somebody, Aruba, who has not come today, but the way we're doing this course, she was curious about this. So what we're doing is that on Mondays and Wednesdays, we do this. And then on Friday, actually tomorrow, and today and tomorrow, I'm going to put together a video on as if I were writing a paper on tongues. I'm going to show you guys how to do research on a really confusing subject. And this is the most confusing subject. So I'm going to show you how to do research, and we're going to do 11 different videos. And we're going to look at every single passage. I think it's going to be you're going to be really surprised. And there's so many questions that come up that you've never thought about before. And the people that say the tongues are not for today, people that say the tongues are for today, all of those people are all looking at the same verses. So what we're going to do is look at every single verse that might say anything about it. And then what we'll do is you guys are going to meet, you're going to just write it in a discussion forum, your response to that day's lecture. Super easy to do. The lecture is not going to be more than 20 minutes long for sure. And that's what we're going to do. By the way, you need to apologize to all of the other people on my behalf because I forgot to record the first part of this class discussion today. I only recorded this half of it. Oh well. You live and you learn. Okay. Any questions about the course or about anything? Luke, you haven't said anything today. You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
It's like,
I've read all this stuff before. It's like I have no questions in church.
yeah, okay. Well, you will have questions next week. Okay. Everybody's okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're okay?
Sir,
Great. Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering if the first part where it says that the husband shouldn't leave his wife, is it like it's for the Christians, believers?
Yes.
And the next part is for the non-believers or somebody who is just converted.
Question. Yes, that is correct. What you said is, so he's talking there to Christian marriages.
Okay. And
Yeah.
what about highlighting, sir?
You
said that we have to highlight something. Yeah.
I just
Please lecture.
uploaded. Let me show you. I just uploaded. Let me make it guys a little smaller here. Right. So I have a new channel, and here's the channel.
On YouTube?
On YouTube, and I'll put the URL to the channel on the website. I just uploaded these a few minutes ago. There's highlighting part 1 and highlighting part 2. And my world famous instructional video. This is an instructional video part 2 on how to do the highlighting circling for 1 Corinthians class. Okay, so we've highlighted the chapter completely. Notice I've gone all the way through it. By the way, I have an additional...
You can't see the video.
Yeah, I know, I can't see it either.
N-O, no, it always counts as half a word.
Now you can
Here
see it,
says,
right?
Not
Yeah, it's here.
thing is N-O, so not married, that's one word. Not sad,
Okay.
that's one word.
So there you go.
Haven't, that's one word. Okay.
All right.
And the reason
All right,
because
shut
not
up.
is
Gosh.
really so important
Shut
in
up.
so many of these verses. Not command.
Thank you. It's annoying. Okay, so there are 2 instructional videos on YouTube, on the channel, and I just uploaded those about 10 minutes before the class started, so I didn't have time to put the URL on the website, but it will be on the website. On the website, let's share screen again. Let me share this. Isn't this so much fun? All right. Here to that. And then I'm going to go to here. Yeah. All right. On the Moodle site, I now have the schedule, and this is super important, everybody, all right? This schedule tells you what your assignment's going to be on underlining that you have to have done by midnight on Sunday. And you're going to be underlining 1 Corinthians 8, easy chapter to underline or highlight. And we're doing all of our highlighting. We're Well, I already showed you this, but you're doing it all on Google Docs because that's really the easiest way to do it for me. I think it'll work well for you, okay? So any questions about this? This schedule tells you what you're going to be doing, has all of the stuff, and it's pretty straightforward.
We have to watch the video and learn how to highlight and just submit it.
There's two videos on how to highlight, and then you just do it online in Google Docs. It's already there, so you don't even have to do much for it. It's already there in Google Docs, and should be pretty easy to do.
And the Google Docs is on Moodle?
Yes.
Okay,
I
I'll check.
will send you, thank you for saying that. I will send you each one of you has your own, I'll send you a link because each one of you has your own file, your own folder with all 9 of the chapters that you're going to be highlighting. So I need to send,
Okay.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah.
You'll send an email with all the 9 chapters and we just have to highlight it.
Not exactly, no. I'll send you a link. And the link
Okay.
will send you to Google Docs and you'll do it on Google Docs.
Okay.
Okay, I have to go because I have another class and half of you were in that class. Okay, so everybody's okay?
Yes, sir. I have a
Yeah.
question.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, quickly.
Sir, do we have class on 10th and 12th April? It's gonna be Good Friday and Easter Day.
No, I'll fix that. Did I say 10th and 12th?
Yeah, it's written over here, I guess.
I'll fix that. No, we're not going to do that. What that's going to do is that's going to, I'll decide. We will have class on the 8th. And we will have class
All right.
23rd. But wait a minute. Where's the 10th and 12th? Oh, there it is. Yeah, but so we'll work it out. I'm glad you brought it up. We'll have class on the 15th, but we won't have it on the 10th and 12th.
Okay.
You could do it in church.
Okay, sir.
You
Okay,
could
sir.
do Good Friday during the sermons because the sermons take so long because they're supposed to be 5 minutes and they're always like 5 hours. But आपकी मर्जी. Okay. God bless you all.
Okay, sir.
Bye.
God bless you
God
too.
bless.
Bye bye.
Yes. And